I'll have to stand next to you. Hopefully you can still hear me. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody in the room. It's my pleasure to introduce Zastera's non-thesis project presentation that has twists and turns. So I don't want to give anything away. I'm just gonna say, I'll turn it over to you now. Questions at the end.
Hi, everyone. Hello, everyone on Zoom. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much, Kathy, for overseeing me in this incredible project, which we will be talking about. So this is my non-thesis master's graduate project. The first part that we're going to walk through is the lived experiences of socio-environmental movement in South Florida. I'll talk a little bit about what that is, and just note that this kind of project is still in the works and is sort of kind of like finding a trajectory of where we're going. Okay. Okay, so to get started, I just wanted to do a land acknowledgement. So this is a practice to just understand, what we have here in Miami. And I think that this is really important because, especially specifically recently, you have the 444 Brickell building that was recently demolished, and Related Group owns this land, but there is underneath it a sequestered burial site. So and this recently went through the city council, a whole meeting about this. So it's just really important to always acknowledge, what we have underneath us in order to understand, where we are as a society and where we're moving forward. And then I just want to also mention the Seminole and Miccosukee, who are the current stewards of this land. So again, the agenda is first going to be the lived experiences of the socio-environmental movement. And then we're going to go into my project, Climate Crusaders. Some of you might be. So looking at South Florida, we have a lot of different issues here, like sea level rise, hurricanes, extreme heat. It's unfortunately one of the cities worldwide that is most vulnerable to the impacts that are happening in climate change. And because of that, we're seeing a lot of different aspects and actions that are moving forward in terms of sustainability and resiliency in terms of the city. And one of these plans is the Resilient 305 strategy. It's an incredible plan that they engaged thousands of residents and experts to figure out what would be the best ways to adapt. And this was through the Rockefeller Resilience 100 Resilient Cities. And this was released in 2019. Now, looking at this, they have it broken up into people and places and actions. And one of the things that was kind of missing from the plan was a social framework of some sort. So how do we get people to get to these actual goals that have been presented? So this was kind of the catalyst to some of the starts of my research of like thinking about how can we use social strategies in order to best meet these goals. Another big influence in the work that I'm doing is the Miami Climate Alliance. Shout out Jeanette. The MCA is an incredible organization of over 158 organizations that come together in order to work to decarbonize Florida. They help in terms of resiliency strategy. They are a network and a hub of the community and help to pull resources into climate mitigation efforts. So really incredible group of people. And I was looking around this group of people and I was wondering, how did these people become the way that they are? Why are they engaging in these organizations? Why are they spending all this time in organizing in order to participate in something like this? So that kind of led to my social questions of what influences participation in environmental stewardship, where is care building for environment happening, and what makes an socio-environmental leader? So how can we help shape and build more people who are interested in getting into the socio-environmental movement and specifically into leadership roles? So significant life experience analysis is a research tool used to identify particular events in people's lives that have shaped who they are. We all have particular events in our lives that we can recall that have made us who we are as a person. So This particular tool is used a lot in looking at environmental stewardship, and it is basically I'll go through the process, but it's basically a interview that is then coded and analyzed to understand what kind of aspects can be pulled out thematically looking at somebody's life experience. So just for this particular project, well, first we're going to go into kind of the process. So first you need to go through city training for human research, identify your research questions, submit your IRB protocol, which is the institutional review board. So they're the ones making sure that you're doing all this research ethically, specifically when it comes to human research. You need to identify and reach out to the participant after the IRB has been submitted and approved, conduct the interview, transcribe the interview, code the interview, which coding is, for those who don't know, is basically pulling out those themes that I was talking about, analyze the data, and then the finalized paper conclusions that would come from that sort of aspect. So the participant in this one interview that I did was chosen because they are currently studying climate-related research on heat and policy. They participated in climate leadership in several local organizations and has led climate education programs. So that's why this particular person was chosen. And I put this sort of mystery person here because when you're doing social science, you're not supposed to reveal your participants through their name or their gender or anything. So you will see this person later on in the presentation, and that was because specifically in the IRB we put that we were going to be filming them and showing these things, but I just want to make sure to talk about how that right now they will remain a mystery because that is how the process works. So what this looks like is up on the upper left-hand corner, sorry for my Zoom friends, you can't see my little pointer that I have on the screen, is the coding key. So I went through and I found 9 different thematics in this interview. So we have education, person/transfer of knowledge, exposure, community, socioeconomics, advocacy, action solutions, nexus points, and committed role or title. And in the top right hand, you see how that looks in terms of when I'm going through and coding the data based off of that. And then from that got broken down into three larger categories. So we have the building individual foundations, which includes the education, transfer, knowledge, exposure, societal influences, which is community and socioeconomics, and then they're promoting change in society, which is advocacy, action solutions, nexus points, and committed roles. So in the building of the individual foundations, we have, can you still hear me? Is it muted?
I'm muted.
Oh, you muted, okay. So if you look here in terms of the building individual foundation, so education is the information being engaged with. Transfer of knowledge is the meeting point in which the transfer of knowledge occurs. In this case, it was teacher to student. So if we look over here, this is the quote from the participant. I have been an environmentalist for what I have to say most of my life, but I think that most of that comes from my high school years and learning about environmental science then. I had really wonderful teachers at the time who really taught me about sticking up for what you care about. And so that really stuck with me. That carried me down that carried me later down in life. And now I'm here studying this as my career. So again, they're mentioning the education aspect and then this transfer of knowledge. Another big one that was part of this was exposure. So in some researchers, it was really interesting that have done some of this similar work before. They found that it was really about nature, about having children be exposed to nature. But some other ones found that, and I thought this was very interesting, negative environmental impacts, such as pollution, deforestation, and disasters that also influence educators. So in this case, one of the things that the participants said that they would tell me time and time again, heat is a problem. It's getting hot. It's been getting hotter. Why is no one talking about this? So in this case, they're actually talking about a negative environmental influence as to why people are engaging with environmental stewardship. So the next one is societal influences. So community and societal socioeconomics. This was really mentioned all throughout the participants' interview. So talking about underserved communities are the most burdened by this issue here in Miami. When we think about access to AC, being able to drive around in a car, it's really people that have less means, less wealth that aren't able to do that. So they were talking specifically about the reason why they got started in a lot of the work that they do was they saw what was happening in the community. They had people coming up to them, discussing these particular issues, and that's why they wanted to help. So that's the one they talked about. I started off at Callus Miami. It's a really great nonprofit here that does a lot of economic racial justice work, but also in the midst of a lot of climate justice work. Really uplifting the fact that those who are least contributing to the problem of climate are the ones that are bearing the most burden by it. And this is also reflected in some of the other things that are being said by other researchers. So in 85 interviews done by Howell and Allen, they found that 27% of the respondents had social justice oriented answers to their responses. And then going into promoting change in society. So this one is about advocacy, action solutions, nexus points, and committed roles. So in this aspect, so when I'm talking about like nexus points, this is like where are the important places that climate leadership is being built in the community. So over here, I was doing Catalyst for a while. That's the nexus point, coordinating the leadership programs. That's the committed role right there. That we had in particular, they had this program called CLEAR, that's education, that focused on climate leadership, advocacy, or community members, that are impacted by these issues, the exposure. So this this interview really talks about how all these things kind of coalesce, but in this particular area, we're talking just about the promoting change in society and how that kind of ends up going. So this is still a working kind of not necessarily conclusion, I would say, even though I put it there. We're still working on this. It's kind of trying to build a tool or a social map of understanding how do we stack these influences in order to understand how to build better climate leadership. So looking at the middle, we have that building the individual foundation that we're talking about. So the essential core of what a person's experience might be, and then kind of opening up to a more reflexive understanding so that they're kind of saying, okay, I might know some of the environmental science that I'm learning from the books or a teacher or something, then kind of how do these things interact in society, and how am I interacting in society? How am I seeing these issues play out? And then the larger kind of becoming a leader and promoting this change within society. So some of the things that I'm thinking about is in understanding this tool and how this will eventually be built is understanding like the long terms versus trending advocacy. How do we build long-term advocacy, and how do we understand like who's coming into the advocacy circuit, who's leaving, and how can we make sure that those roles are filled or defined? What does the feedback look like from like one educator to the next in the long term? How do you keep building bigger groups and adaptability as Miami changes, and how will the roles and the people change? And then what are the things that people need to collect to fill the role? So, you know, I don't necessarily want to gamify this, but, you know, if you're thinking about you're on a video game and you have a character, what are the tools that you need to have? What are the skills or the quests that need to go out and you need to accomplish in the community to really understand how you can not only be your best self when it comes to environmental advocacy, but how can you really show up for others in a role that is impactful. And that's kind of like just this one project. So then we're going to talk about how that actually influences my other work that a lot of you are more familiar with. So Climate Crusaders, educating for Earth. So hi, my name is Alexander Zastera. I've been a Miami-Dade resident for about 9 years, living all over Little Haiti, North Miami, South Beach, and Kendall. I'm an artist, educator, activist, now scientist. I've worked with a whole bunch of different community organizations, and now I'm about to be graduating with a master's in environmental studies from FIU. So before I came to FIU, I was gallivanting around South Florida as a superhero named Climate Crusader. And as you can see up here, this is me in the top left in West Kendall Library. We were making recycled plastic planters. I was producing video media based off of, this was from a climate march that happened at Miami Beach City Hall, kind of building out online resources and then spending time at City Hall to understand how people were advocating for these particular issues. Thank you, Courtney, appreciate that. So trying to figure out what was happening in the socio-environmental movement and how can arts and advocacy be used, and then kind of trying to understand, coming back to FIU, what is really the science and what's really happening in terms of resiliency planning, and how can I bolster and build my individual foundational knowledge in order to help. So really quickly, an overview of why we need Climate Crusaders. So the big problem is we are running out of time. So the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, gave us some pretty dire warnings about decarbonization by 2030. So it's been a big issue, and they've been basically every single year just being like, it's just gonna get hotter. Up here in the top right hand side, we have climate illiteracy. So Yale's Project on Climate Change Communication found that of the Americans that were concerned about climate change, not the ones that even didn't care about it, the concerned ones received a 51% failing grade on basic scientific questions on climate change. So we have an issue with climate literacy. The Miami Foundation at this bottom left one here, communications issue, they did a report on mobilizing people for sea level rise, and they found that less doom and gloom, we need to have frequent, genuine conversations, clear leadership and accountability, engage artists, activists, youth, and elders, and need a real vision for a plan of action. And then over here on the right-hand side, again, the swamp politics and energy blocks. Our energy system is very much entangled within our political system via money channels and donations. And so it's really, really difficult to kind of untangle a little bit of like what's happening here. So this is the big scope of what we're having to deal with here in Florida. This is again from the Miami Foundation's The Mobilizing Miami for Sea Level Rise report. There are big gaps in communication and understanding. Government doesn't understand equity issues. Scientists don't understand financial issues. Low income in communities don't understand day-to-day realities of climate change. There is no one shared story about the future of Miami. And while it's not necessarily all these things being true, but she's just trying to talk about that there really is this issue of like, we're not fully communicating with each other, and there really is this need to try to come together to speak each other's languages a little bit more. So how do we do that? Lights, camera, action. We make a video project together. A culmination of is a video series produced with the community connected to resiliency plans, STEAM curriculum, and climate science. So Climate Crusaders is a project that allows many different aspects of science, education, social science, city planners, people who are in health, to money, lawyers, technology, to come together to be able to utilize the project to meet each other, to understand each other, as well as share their aspects and thoughts on resiliency from their perspective, that's then framed within these larger episode themes that we have on the right-hand side. So the inspiration for this is looking at Sesame Street, Captain Planet. I'm looking at climate resiliency plans, Miami Climate Alliance. We have Al Gore and his Climate Reality Project, Greta Thunberg over here with Fridays for Future, the Miami-Dade Climate Action Strategy. So thinking about these other kind of inspiration and public education initiatives that have been put in place beforehand as kind of larger inspiration for what this could look like. So how do we save the world? We call them the community superheroes. So again, this is what I was talking about bringing in people from many different sorts of knowledge backgrounds and talking about resiliency through that, and then planning out these superheroes. So what you're seeing are sketches of kind of past years. This is kind of first how it starts. It's like a little bit of like inklings of ideas, and then that turns into, this is the Paul Vera, incredible artist and illustrator and good friend. And you can see on the left-hand side, these are the current Climate Crusaders that we've developed through this process that we're going to go through. So first, we speak with different community members. So this one is Michael John Green. He is the deputy developer of economic and innovation for Miami-Dade County. So his whole thing is about financial opportunity, about teaching kids financial literacy. So we're kind of pulling these different elements. You have like over here is the Riddler, This guy's money bags from Spyro. This is Calvin and Hobbes, these leaves, leave it to me. Green, so thinking about economics and money, and how that might develop into a character. And then that then forms into, this is mint green. So, like mint, like money, but also like mints of color, kind of fresh. So again, talking about how his character would talk about like financial literacy, but it's also a basketball player, so it could be sports and heat and green economics. So developing these like storylines for these characters that they can talk about multiple things as they interact and move through the issues. So Climate Crusaders is a combination of community collaboration, social science research, school curriculum connections, scientific data methods and tools, well-crafted storytelling, real-world solutions-based problem solving, energy policy, and regional plans. And we're going to go a little bit into kind of what I was learning here at FIU specifically that helped to develop this field. So first of all, I want to say thank you to all of my professors at FIU. You were incredible. So this was me really kind of sitting and learning the science. So going through wetland ecology, environments of the changing planet, natural resource conservation and policy, research in earth and environment, environmental sciences, environment and economics, and graduate seminars. I put you all as a mangrove nursery because I kind of felt like a fish that was growing in this area. So thank you for providing a great home to be protected and to learn more about the environment and specifically the South Florida environment around us. And so while I was taking those classes, I was actually taking notes because I have the tests, but I was also making sure to kind of take notes as to what these episodes could look like and what are the components. So on the left-hand side, you see Everglades everywhere. And it's has like the challenges, solutions, but I was like taking educational concepts. So Florida's geology, indigenous knowledge, history of the land, stormwater treatment areas, biogeochemistry, urban development boundary, things that different concepts that were being discussed, as well as things like the class lab being here, water budgets. So for those of you not familiar, water budgets are a way to mathematically look at the water inflow and outflow of systems. So that could be a really good project for children to learn math skills while also addressing the local ecological issues and understanding about how systems flow. You can also see down below here underneath the vocabulary is climate plan connection, so the Resilient 305 strategy, as well as the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So as I'm going along, I'm also pulling from these action plans. And then episode expertise, kind of just starting to mark down who are the people involved in some of these conversations that are happening. So mapping out these systems that will then later on be refined more by others. So through the sustainability cities class with Tiffany Troxler, I want to thank her so much. We learned about this amazing framework called Social Ecological Technological Framework. And when I'm thinking about Climate Crusaders, I'm trying to think about how can we have the social interact with the ecological, interact with the technological, and understand each other more. So for example, the technological would be kind of like the actual physicality of the city or the technologies we're engaging with, pumps for water. You have the ecological or the biophysical domain, which would be, like the wetlands we have or the coastlines that we have all over here in South Florida, and then how people are interacting with that socially. So increasing, if you're thinking about it, a wheel, kind of like the turning mechanisms for that wheel, Climate Crusaders acting as that. And the other part that we were talking a lot about were the climate action plans. So I learned about like the actual flow of how it starts at the UN development goals, and then it works its way to national goals. And then what does that look like locally for us in South Florida? So trying to understand how these things flow together and how we can let people know that there are actually strategies in place, because that was one of the things that I was like really disheartened before coming to school, is kind of like, like climate change, you get really like bogged down, you're like, what's going on? And I'm really upset. And, how do we help mitigate those feelings? And by doing it, it's like letting them know that there are like plans in place and that there are people working towards these things. They just need to know how to like both access and read them. So from Dr. Strong, I want to thank them for learning about motivational social science. So this is from self-determination theory, but specifically it's kind of this intrinsic versus extrinsic motivations. And what that means is intrinsic is like your own internal motivation to do something. And extrinsic is like having something else, like it's like, oh, you're going to be punished by paying a fine. So that's your motivation for doing something or not doing something. And in that motivation studies, it found that if you can build intrinsic motivation, it's much more successful than having an extrinsic motivator. So how do we do that? Looking at basic psychological needs theory, there are kind of like three parts. There's like autonomy, competent or competitiveness, and relatedness. So kind of thinking about like, how do we, for example, like on relatedness, how do we take these issues and relate them to the everyday of a person so that they understand why they need to care about these things? So it's taking these aspects of like how we can fulfill basic psychological needs so that they can intrinsically feel motivated to care about some of these climate and social issues.
Make sure your sound is shared on.
Well, can we hear it? We can't hear it in here. You don't hear it on Zoom? No. Okay, well, I can just point out really quickly. So this was what I was like talking about the interviews that I was doing. So this is one of the people that I was interviewing, Myra. She's the one that was I was talking about earlier. And this is just kind of like, again, addressing how significant life experiences can be applied to this. But then also like, if we're creating a television show or a variety show, these can be interspersed, like different interviews from different people that kind of show and introduce that into the community. So from science curriculum, this is from Dr. Dare. I learned about both the Florida state standards, or Florida next gen state standards, and the next generation state science standards, which is more of a national approach. So thinking about how do we align the curricular values of Florida with this programming so that it's very easy for teachers to utilize in their classrooms. So in that class, we worked on a curriculum unit plan. So this is one about know your power. So it's talking about how do we reduce the carbon emissions in Florida, because currently Florida Power and Light is the largest power company in Florida with only 2% of its energy structure is non-carbon producing. In order to meet national and international benchmarks, Florida will have to transform its energy grid. It has been estimated that it takes 50 years to switch to a new energy grid. The purpose of this lesson is for students to understand and discuss competently how electrical energy is produced, the history of power politics in Florida, and what are the best regional choices for low or zero carbon energy production so that they can build the energy systems of the future. So again, looking how can we put this or be able to make it as easy as possible in order for a teacher to literally just press play and then have some sort of curriculum that they can then follow. And what does this look like in terms of an actual physicality? So this is another one of the projects that's kind of been on the side and working in tandem is a comic activity booklet that would utilize some of these characters. This one right here is Short Circuit. So shout out to Lene. So Short Circuit is all about kind of like talking about democratizing energy and figuring out how to change electrical systems. And this is the activity for that particular page is mapping, energy mapping in South Florida. So students would go on and actually use these stickers on the board to figure out what kind of power plants that we have around them so that they're more aware of what is situationally around them in their communities and what might go into the decision making about making those decisions. So I want to thank Simone for the interdisciplinary research methods class. So this one really expanded the research potential of this project and added the history and social emotional learning aspect to it. There was this South Florida curriculum collection tool built, and it was trying to understand that there's so much already going on in terms of different curriculums happening here in South Florida. How can we gather and understand what is happening and create some sort of a hub that teachers could access so that they're not having to pull off of all these different organizational websites, all these different places? Where could we easily make something that is tangible for them to be able to use? And then this is going just really quickly to, as part of that project, Amani Hudson brought in this element of the social emotional learning. So really thinking about how can we support the emotional health of youth and learning about the climate crisis. When thinking about this in terms of episodes, it's like, how can we utilize some of this knowledge and how the characters interact? Like, what can we have them talking about or interacting about? You know, maybe there's a whole discussion about like what happens after something gets destroyed after a hurricane. Like, how can we really help support the emotional health of the youth through this programming? Liz Brejo, she brought up an aspect of history. So again, kind of also with that land acknowledgement that was done earlier. So understanding our past in order to go where into our future. So what kind of history can we talk about in terms of like climate policy or even the like ecological regions, like how we're having to replumb the Everglades now because of what was done to it in the 40s and 50s. So understanding what has happened in order to understand where we're going and moving forward is super important. And what does this look like? So this is climatecrusader.com. It's still in the works, so it's a little rough, but we're still working on it. So I want to point out that this is like a digital headquarters. So when we're talking about like that climate curriculum collection tool or the climate action plans or even a social network analysis, which is just understanding who are the players in terms of the socio-environmental movement, this is what it would look like. So you have, for example, the sun is the community directory, which would be the social network analysis of like understanding who is plugged into this space. The climate curriculum collection, if you look on the desk, there's this nice big apple here that says educator resources. So how can we help teachers be able to have the curriculum that's connected to those things? The laptop on the desk says CC videos. So these will be like where the videos are stored. You know, on the wall is the calendar with the climate action plans. And what you'll see next is if you click this little star for the media part, you'll go into this area, so the media club, which has play, listen, read, watch. And this is what it looks like in terms of like the research. So the take the survey, that's part of the climate curriculum collection tool. So you have your books, videos, orgs, music, apps. We're collecting from the community different like books that they're reading, videos, all these things, and then organizing them into almost like a digital library online. And then this is what like the book club would look like. So you have like your book and then it can be rotating out. So again, this is just the combination of community collaboration, social science research, school curriculum connections, scientific data, methods and tools, well-crafted storytelling, real-world solution-based problem solving, energy policy, and regional plans. Okay, unfortunately, we can't hear it in here, but I will play this. This is every superhero needs a training montage, if it'll play.
Put the sound on your up.
Mine. No, I don't hear it. I hope you can hear it online. But basic gist is this was I was taking dance classes here at FIU. I was working out on a schedule, and it was really important because I was learning. Well, first of all, I'll talk about with the dance classes with Pioneer. Thank you so much. Pioneer, it was learning through your body, like rather than your head. And sometimes I think this was conversations we'd always have with like the scientists, is it was like always very heady sometimes, and they were always like stressed out. I'm like, are you moving? Are you actually working out? Are you doing something to like move this energy? And they're like, well, sometimes. But sometimes we would actually plan to then now work out together because I'm like, hey, like it's about like mind-body connection. But sometimes it was literally like walking in and like not thinking about Bot's environment and economics class. I could just think about dance for a second. So it's about really kind of like disconnecting from the sphere and really connecting to just myself. So I highly recommend movement to everybody. And if you can take a dance class here at FIU, it is life-changing, honestly. Oh, and I just really want to thank, go back. I just want to really thank Adam, NJ, and Oriana. They were my super body crew. So Adam's swimming every Saturday, MJ and I met once a week for arms, and Oriana are Mondays doing leg day. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We had so much fun. And really great way to, if you are very busy and need to see your friends, just like schedule them to work out, because then you can actually like interact with them once a week, and you're both doing something that is helping you out as a person. Okay, so next is my Radcliffe Art and Design Incubator. So I was accepted as a fellow to the Radcliffe Art and Design Incubator, and this was a year-long fellowship, and it's over on the BBC campus at FIU. And it's an incredible incubator where they take creative entrepreneurs and really help them think about the business aspects of their projects and help and like really fortify them and push them into thinking about like their media strategies, whether they're revenue streams. So thank you, Jacek, Neil, Maggie, and Dimitri for being so wonderful for the last year and pushing me even when I was uncomfortable and sometimes thinking about it. I really, really appreciate that. And this is, yeah, just showing a little bit of like what was happening in the incubator. It really was a focus on mentorship, collaborating with fellows, and strengthening the entrepreneurial spirit. And from that, a lot of things came in terms of thinking about business. So this is thinking about customer segments, channels, and early adopters. So early adopters would be like, who are the people that you think are going to be the first ones to support you? Channels are how are you reaching your audiences? So like your workshops, partnerships, merch, website, video content subscription. Also, this picture right here is from the Biscayne Nature Center, which was one of Climate Crusaders' first early adopters. So thank you to them. And then over here is like customer segments, like how can you, who do you reach out to? So educational institutions, environmental orgs, government, business, families, and children. Thinking about your own advantage and where you lie within the context of your projects or your business. So in this case, Climate Crusaders is an intersection of art, science, education, energy policy, location. So that's why it kind of like sets itself from the other, from other environmental orgs or environmental education orgs. It's like it's lying within kind of this nexus point that allows these other places to collaborate. And then what would be thinking about this as a business, like revenue streams, how do you get money and financial support into your business? So through video views, subscription-based, grants, products, and having workshops. And what's my timeline? So I'm going to be graduating literally May 1st. Thank you everyone for coming in. I know. Having a website is live. We're still working on it. We need to finish the comic book. But we're kind of coming up to working on workshops, training, episode writing, maybe establishing some sort of office or headquarters, and then trying to work our way up into filming some sort of pilot episode of the first of the series. So then it can really kind of gather the attention that it needs to. So this is kind of like where we're going. And thank you for this wonderful child who drew a little picture of me all this stuff. Climate Crusaders needs. Okay, I'm just gonna put it out into the universe. Funding. Administrative support. And office space. Like I'm great with the creatives. I'm great with bringing people together. I need somebody to kind of like help me curate and work on structuring some of these things. So put it out there. And then just the thank yous. Thank you to Miami Climate Alliance for always being there. Peer Group, which is an incredible environmental law nonprofit. So to Teresa and Abigail, thank you. And then Gulf South from Green New Deal, they help support some of the comic book work that has already been accomplished. Thank you to my FIU dads. You know who you are. I came in for school and I didn't expect, and I ended up finding out that it was the people. And I am so grateful for being adopted by y'all and all the fun times that we've had, and like really how you've changed my worldview on thinking, and again kind of have really driven my motivation of being like, oh, there are people doing really wonderful work out here in the world that makes me believe in a brighter future. So thank you. And then the Quidocus Focus, Daryl, Oriana, Stephanie, like really thank you for always being supportive. And I wouldn't have gotten to school without you. Really, I wouldn't have, so thank you. And then to Kathy, like, I can't thank you enough. You were absolutely wonderful, especially for me coming in and as you can see, I was in so many different areas and you were like, yes, I will take you on and I will help lead you. I will also rein you in when you need to be, but I will also let you be free and open a little bit. So I really just appreciate that. And shout out to my parents for supporting me. Thank you. I love you, mom and dad. And references. Question.
Well, congratulations, Alexander. This is Mignon, and I am thrilled. This was insightful,
Yeah, we also don't need
phenomenal.
questions.
And hello to
Yeah,
you
yeah.
from
Yeah,
Atlantic
have
City.
you spoken with like teachers and stuff? Like how do you see this interfacing with like the public school system and stuff? Yeah.
So Lulu asked if I had talked to teachers about this and how do I see this facing with this interacting with the public school system. So I have talked to some teachers. I've already taken this character a couple times into some different STEAM oriented projects at public schools. So I have a little bit of understanding about how the children kind of interact with it, what the teachers are kind of looking from it. I guess from what I've observed and just from some of the like studying in the scientific curriculum building is like the easier the tool is, the better. Like and really doing the legwork instead of making the teachers do the legwork. If you don't prepare something that doesn't already have all those connections, you're really not going to have the teachers be able to utilize it because they're already so overburdened. It's like you can't really put that on them. So that's one of the aspects. I would also say I am being very cautious in terms of like looking at the state of Florida and education and kind of like what is happening and being very vigilant about kind of like looking to see what's happening. So before I make any moves and kind of like trying to structure for that, because this project is so interdisciplinary and it's just showing the people's lives of Miami to the world. But sometimes that complexity is lost on some people and is unfortunately like seen as opposition as opposed to just people existing. So I am kind of trying to think through some of those kind of strategies for that. Yeah. Yeah.
I think someone was trying to ask a question online, but just since we're not hearing the sound.
And Jan, do you have a question or was it just the comment? Thank you, I appreciate it.
Just a comment. So happy for